In a debate against Jonathan McLatchie, Alex O'Connor uses the divine hiddenness argument, to which Jonathan doesn't really give any good responses, and I can say as a Christian, Alex won that debate, when he shouldn't have, and I'll explain why. Take a listen to how Alex constructs his divine hiddenness argument.
Divine hiddenness can be stated as follows. Premise 1. If there is a God, he is perfectly loving, something I'm pretty sure Jonathan agrees with. Premise 2. If a perfectly loving God exists, nonresistant nonbelief does not occur. Premise 3. Nonresistant nonbelief does occur. 4. Therefore, no perfectly loving God exists. And the conclusion from the first premise is that therefore there is no God. A loving God, like the Christian God, would surely not refuse any willing person from developing a relationship with him. And so if somebody is truly non-resistant and open to receiving God's grace, we should expect them to receive it.
To address this, Alex rightly points out that as believers, we have to target his third premise, that non-resistant non-belief does occur. And I'm going to provide an argument to why it doesn't occur. The first premise of my argument is that non-resistant non-belief requires the complete absence of resistance. And my second premise is that bias, whether conscious or subconscious, constitutes a form of resistance. And then my third premise, psychological studies confirm that it is impossible to be completely free of bias. Therefore, non-resistant non-belief cannot occur. Well, I think the argument that I just presented perfectly shuts down that somebody can be a non-resistant non-believer. But I'm going to go into why this argument has so many underlying assumptions that are just fallacies. First, how are we defining God as perfectly loving? A commonly accepted principle is that authentic love requires free will. Love cannot be coerced or forced. It must involve a genuine choice. If God were to reveal himself in a way that were impossible to disbelieve, that would override our free will. Belief in God would no longer be a choice, but a necessity. We would be turning into robots or automatons, and that is not something a perfectly loving God would allow. Therefore, a perfectly loving God allows the choice for unbelief. Alex also says that he hasn't been given enough evidence to believe, but this raises several questions.
I would absolutely love to escape death. I would relish being the recipient of unconditional love. Less selfishly, I would love to be able to worship that which deserves to be worshipped. I just don't think it's true. Now, try as I might, look where I can, I find no response, no hint, nothing. I don't choose to disbelieve in God any more than I choose to disbelieve in aliens, despite how much I might want them to.
How can Alex prove that, even to himself, that if Jesus showed himself in front of him, that he would believe? Alex is not a psychologist, and Alex has not been psychoanalyzed. Just because he claims a particular event would make him believe doesn't make it true. We know that the psychological field is incredibly complex. You can't just say for 100% certainty that you would believe if given the stimulus. Alex's argument also falls into the bare assertion fallacy, where someone claims something is self-evident without providing the evidence for it. He asserts that he is a non-resistant non-believer, but what evidence has he given to that? Well, he can't give perfect evidence because such evidence cannot possibly exist. Even a psychologist given full access to Alex's life could not definitively claim for a fact that Alex has no subconscious resistance toward Christianity. Human minds are influenced by countless factors. We have upbringing, cultural norms, experiences, and biases, all of which shape our belief or disbelief. And only God, who knows all of those things, can definitively say what a person's biases are. Thus, Alex's and anybody else who claims to be a non-resistant non-believer is acting on conjecture. It has no evidence for the claim. Finally, the divine hiddenness argument is deeply subjective. It holds the same weight as a Christian saying, "Oh, I had a spiritual experience." Well, we can't prove or disprove that, and Alex is pulling the same move here. Alex has even said it himself, that it is nearly impossible to refute personal experience. That's why he holds on the standards of arguments for God, personal experience so high, because it's almost impossible to refute. In the same way that a Christian spiritual experience doesn't prove God's existence, is the same way that Alex's claim that he is a non-resistant non-believer doesn't disprove God. Both are clearly subjective and lack sufficient evidence. Again, Alex O'Connor's argument fails for two reasons. Number one, it relies on a flawed premise that non-resistant non-belief occurs, which is undermined by the inherent biases present in all humans. Secondly, it fails for its assumptions about what a perfectly loving God would do. It disregards the necessity of free will and the sufficiency of the evidence God has already given him. Ultimately, Alex's argument is not a strong critique of God's existence. It's subjective, speculative, and downright logically inconsistent at times. I would argue that divine hiddenness, far from disproving God, actually helps the Christian case in proving that God is a loving God and allows for free will and loving relationships. Thank you all for watching. Let me know in the comments if you agree with me. God's peace.